Well, federal parliament has returned to honour the victims of the Bondi attack and debate the government's legislative response. The Prime Minister's appealing for unity on new hate speech laws after making a major concession.
The gun laws will be separate, and then the laws on hate crimes and migration will proceed, but we will not be proceeding with the racial vilification provisions.
It was a weekend withdrawal from Anthony Albanese, breaking up his omnibus bill, dropping the most contentious element entirely and urging unity ahead of Parliament's return.
It is time that the politics stopped.
You know when the Labor Party is in trouble when they pull out the unity card.
Tighter gun laws are now set to pass with support from the Greens, while throughout today, Labor and the Coalition have been trying to reach a compromise on what's left of the hate speech measures, new powers to ban certain groups, cancel visas and penalise hate preachers.
We are in good faith looking at the balance of the legislation. We have identified some issues that require further work, and we are working in good faith with the government.
But for a moment, legislating gave way to a lament shared by all sides of politics.
We honour those we lost by answering this question: how did this happen? And how can we make sure it never happens again?
We will not meet your suffering with silence. We will not leave you in darkness.
Liberals and Nationals have been meeting tonight to discuss their respective positions on the government's hate speech laws. After a day of talks, a deal has yet to be struck. David Littleproud is the leader of the Nationals. David Littleproud, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So there have been negotiations throughout the day, various meetings taking place tonight. What can you tell us about where these negotiations are currently at?
Well, look, they're ongoing. You've got to appreciate this is complex policy work, legislation that we only had effectively 2 days to scrutinise through a committee process. And then over the weekend, the Prime Minister walked away from a part of the legislation that was going to impinge on the free speech of many Australians, and we're proud to have stopped that. But there are elements that we want to support, but there are other elements that obviously we have serious issues about. So we're trying to be reasonable, we're trying to be constructive, but we haven't got a lot of time because of the time frame in which the Prime Minister's put on us. And that's disappointing, because I think what Australians want to see is for us to get an outcome, and to put an arbitrary timeline of tomorrow night with something as complex as this, I don't think respects the Parliament. It doesn't respect the Australian people. The Prime Minister said he wanted to bring the Australian people together. To do that, you've got to bring the Australian Parliament together that represents them, so that we could be part of that process to start with. Instead, he took a take it or leave it attitude, and unfortunately we all left it, and we're now being constructive in saying we'll try and resurrect what we can out of it in a constructive way, and the Nationals will play our role in that.
So to that end, you've said there are elements you want to support, but other elements you have concerns about. What are the elements that you are keen to support?
Oh, look, we obviously see the merit in a reform to the Migration Act that gives more power and the ability for the Immigration Minister to cancel visas, to deport those that are here on a visa as guests of the Australian people that want to come and change the discourse of our society in a negative way and perpetrate hate. That's a common sense part of public policy that I think every Australian would be supportive of. We also, are sympathetic and want to lean into the intent of the banning of hate groups, but we've got to make sure there's no unintended consequences in terms of the legislation and how that interacts and how far-reaching that goes. And I mean, the government's got form on this. That's why they overreached in the original freedom speech elements of this legislation, and we want to make sure that they haven't overreached in terms of trying to identify these organisations. And we're trying to do that as quickly but as carefully as we possibly can in a constructive way.
Are you saying there's overreach at the moment in that plan to ban or give the Minister the power to ban hate groups?
Well, we're exploring that, Dave. This is complex public policy with legislation that we don't have access to the legal drafters that the government does. Nothing's been provided to the National Party other than our own wit and our goodwill, and we're trying to do that constructively. And this is why it's made it very difficult because of this arbitrary timeline that for some reason the Prime Minister wants to jet out of here Tuesday night.
But
this is important.
In fairness, as the government points out, it was you guys, the coalition, who demanded Parliament be brought back. We don't really have a clear sense, though, of what exactly you want Parliament to pass.
Yeah, well, we did want to bring Parliament back before Christmas, and I made it very clear, in fact, I'm on the public record, that Jennifer Siegel, the government's Gillian Siegel, their own anti-Semitism envoy, made it very clear there was elements of legislation around immigration that could have been brought back. They had that back in June. The reality was that we said we could come back and we could work collectively before Christmas to look at other elements. But instead, the Prime Minister said that he would go away and draft his own bill without any consultation with us, and then finds it difficult to understand that when he hands us a bill that he said, take it or leave it, that we had issues with, that we're for some reason to blame.
On the other bill that will come into the Parliament tomorrow on gun law reform, it's up to the states to determine how many firearms an individual can own. The Commonwealth legislation we're talking about here involves a few things, more frequent and ongoing background checks, including ASIO intelligence. Non-citizens would not be able to have a gun licence, and then the Commonwealth would set up and co-fund the gun buyback scheme. Will you vote for or against this bill?
Well, we support further ASIO checks. In fact, I wholeheartedly and welcomed the National Gun Register. It's something that should already have been put in place. The money has been allocated for that for nearly over 18 months. There's no reason why that shouldn't and hasn't already been done.
Non-citizens owning guns?
Well, and those elements of that, I think we're prepared to understand and explore and support, with some understanding that in rural and remote areas, there is necessities for farm workers, for their own safety, to be out in the middle of paddocks with firearms because we have wild dogs.
You're talking about non-citizens.
Non-citizens, but we're being open to that element of it. But the ASIO checks we wholeheartedly support, but we won't be supporting the rest of the bill because within that is a buyback that Queensland, the Northern Territory and Tasmania don't agree to, but there's other...
Well, that's because they want the Commonwealth to fully fund it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is that I don't believe that guns are the problem. Radical Islam is the problem, and this has been nothing more than a diversion. Even the laws that Chris Minns put in place would not have averted Bondi because he reduced the ownership of guns in New South Wales to 4 per person. 4 guns were used in that tragedy, in that horrific event. We are not...
But this gun buyback, sorry to interrupt here, but John Howard, of course, with the support of the Nationals after Port Arthur 30 years ago, put in place a gun buyback. It saw hundreds of thousands of illegal and surplus guns removed from the community. What's wrong with removing surplus and illegal guns?
Well, they were semi-automatics and we supported that, and the National Party saw that, and in fact had those laws not been put in place, the horrific scenes we saw in Bondi would have been significantly greater, and the subsequent gun laws and licensing that has been put in place has protected Australians. Guns are not the problem. Radical Islam is. You just can't go into anywhere in this country and buy a gun. You have to pass a fit and proper person test. You then have to go through training. You have to wait 28 days. You can't go in and say, I want a 303, a high calibre gun. You actually have to demonstrate a necessity for it.
But if there are surplus guns that people don't use, and illegal guns that have in the last 30 years become illegal, surely what's wrong with a voluntary scheme to buy them back?
Well, David, the guns that are out there, if you think, in all honesty, that by spending $1 billion that you are going to recover illegal guns, I think, and you are going to save Australians from future terror attacks, then you are kidding yourselves. If people have that much hate in their heart, well, if people have that much hate in their heart, they are going to find a weapon off the black market or from overseas.
But surely the more guns in the community, the higher the danger, the higher the risk.
No, David. If they're licensed to proper Australians. And in fact, what happened and what Bondi proved is not a failure of the licensing and the guns. It was a failure of the process. I think our agencies have serious questions to answer. When someone in a household is put on a terrorist watch list and their gun licence and their gun is not removed from them, then the question needs to be why. If you have a domestic violence order on you in this country, your gun and your gun licence is revoked.
But will you vote for or against the bill?
We won't be voting for the bill. Because it has other elements to it that go to the very heart around import controls, even to the use of a carriage service, that someone who may go and look up online how to put a scope on their gun or to reload their gun would breach the law.
Okay.
I mean, this is a stark overreach that Australians need to understand. The core problem is not guns. The problem is extreme Islamic behaviour in this country and anti-Semitism, that we have to have the courage as Australians to look ourselves in the mirror and say we've allowed this to seep into our society. Unless we face up to that, guns are not the issue. It's a diversion, a cheap diversion by Anthony Albanese.
Finally, David Littleproud, One Nation is today for the first time ahead of the coalition, according to News Poll. Is it time, do you think, to reassess your strategy towards One Nation? Has following Pauline Hanson on issues like guns or net zero really worked?
Well, let me just say there were two polls today and they were poles apart. One that had us below One Nation, one that had us nearly going past the government.
So with One Nation closing the gap.
Well, what I think, I'll finish because I think it's important. I think both polls are from reputable companies and both polls are instructive, not just to the National Party, to the Liberal Party, and to One Nation and to Labor. They are instructive to us as politicians to understand there is a lot of frustration, there is anger out there, and from that comes opportunity. And opportunity to lead on policy, and I'm proud as the Nationals what we've led. We left the coalition until we were able to secure 4 policies that were important to regional Australians. We were able to secure a sensible net zero policy, removing ourselves from net zero. The Nationals have led the way in terms of policy formation, but it's important we continue that and be able to articulate that, and that's what these polls show. There's an opportunity for leadership here for us to show, and I'm proud of the role the National Party's played in the coalition. And if we focus on that policy of solving the problems of Australians, that anger is out there to tap into.
David Littleproud, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.